My son evicted me from the house I paid for. My son changed the locks on a Tuesday. That was the detail I kept coming back to later. Not the police officer standing on my front porch. Not the folded paper in his hand. Not even my son standing behind him with his arms crossed, refusing to look me in the eye. It was the fact that he chose a Tuesday. Trash day. The day I always dragged the bins to the curb before breakfast, in the robe he bought me for Christmas 2 years earlier. I was still holding the blue recycling bin handle when the officer said, "Ma'am, are you Mrs. Nolan?" I nodded slowly. Behind him, my son Evan stared at the porch railing. "What's going on?" I asked. The officer looked uncomfortable. That was when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. "I'm here to serve notice," he said. "Notice for what?" Evan finally looked at me. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "You can't stay here anymore, Mom." I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because my mind couldn't find another response. "This is my house." Evan pressed his lips together. The officer handed me the paper. At the top, in bold letters, were words I had never imagined seeing with my name under them. Notice to vacate. I read the address twice. My address. The house I had paid for. The house where I raised my son after his father left. The house where I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and learned how to fix a leaking sink because I couldn't afford a plumber. "This is wrong," I said. Evan said nothing. The officer shifted his weight. "According to the county records, the owner is Mr. Evan Nolan." I looked at my son. "No." His jaw tightened. "Mom, please don't make this harder." Harder? As if I had created the problem. As if I had walked onto his porch and demanded his life back. I held up the paper with shaking hands. "You know I paid for this house." "I know," he said quietly. "Then what did you do?" For the first time, shame flickered across his face. Then it vanished. What I had to. The officer told me I had 30 days. 30 days to leave the kitchen, where I measured Evan's height on the pantry door. 30 days to pack the bedroom where I had cried myself to sleep after his father disappeared. 30 days to accept that my only child had somehow become the legal owner of my home. When the officer left, Evan stayed on the porch. I waited for him to explain. He didn't. So I asked the only question that mattered. "How?" He rubbed his forehead. "You signed the transfer." "I signed no such thing." "You did." "No, Evan." His eyes hardened then. Not angry exactly. Worse. Closed. "You don't remember everything anymore." Those words hit harder than the eviction notice. For the past year, Evan had made little comments like that. "You forgot you told me. You always misplace things. You've been confused lately." At first, I laughed them off. Then I started writing things down. Doctor's appointments. Bills. Passwords. Conversations. Not because I was losing my mind. Because my son kept insisting I was. I stepped closer to him. "Are you saying I'm senile?" "I'm saying you needed help," he said, "and I helped." "No, you took." His face twitched. "You were going to lose it anyway." That was the first crack. I heard it clearly. Not in the house. In the story he was trying to tell. "Lose it how?" He looked away. "Taxes, bills, repairs. You didn't understand what was happening." I almost believed for one foolish second that he had been scared. Then I remembered the officer. The locks. The eviction notice. "You could have talked to me." I tried. "No," I said, "you managed me." He walked down the steps. 30 days, Mom." Then he got into his truck and drove away. I stood in the yard, holding the notice, while the recycling bin lay on its side beside me. That night, I didn't pack. I sat at my kitchen table, with every folder I owned spread out around me. Mortgage statements. Tax receipts. Insurance papers. Bank records. The deed from when I bought the house 17 years earlier. My name was everywhere. Only my name. I searched every file cabinet twice. Nothing showed a transfer. Nothing showed a sale. Nothing showed a gift. At midnight, I opened my notebook and wrote one question at the top of a blank page. How did Evan get my house? The next morning, I went to the county recorder's office. A young clerk pulled up the property record and turned the monitor slightly toward me. There it was. My house. My parcel number. Owner, Evan Nolland. Transfer type, quitclaim deed. Date recorded, 4 months earlier. My stomach dropped. Can I see the document? I asked. She printed it. My hands were steady until I saw the signature. My name. Or something close to it. The letters leaned too far right. The capital S had a loop I never used. But the worst part was the notary stamp. Because I recognized the name. Tessa Vaughn. Evan's girlfriend. I stared at it until the clerk asked if I was okay. No, I said. And for the first time since the officer appeared on my porch, anger burned hotter than fear. Evan hadn't just tricked me. He had planned this. I drove straight to his apartment. Tessa answered the door. She was wearing one of Evan's old college sweatshirts, and holding a mug like this was a normal morning. Her smile faded when she saw the deed in my hand. I need to speak to my son. He's not here. Then I'll speak to you. Her eyes dropped to the paper. I don't think that's a good idea. You notarized my signature. Her face went still. I notarize a lot of things. You notarized a forged deed, transferring my house to Evan. She swallowed. Then she stepped back and tried to close the door. I put my palm against it. Tessa. Her eyes filled fast, too fast. I told him this was wrong. That one sentence opened the next door. I stopped pushing. What did he tell you? She looked over her shoulder into the apartment. Then back at me. He said you agreed. I didn't. He said you were embarrassed, that you didn't want anyone knowing you couldn't manage the house anymore. I felt sick. That is not true. I asked why you weren't there. My breath caught. What? Tessa's voice dropped. He brought the document already signed. He said you signed it at home because you were too anxious to come in. And you notarized it anyway. She started crying. I know. I wanted to hate her. Part of me did. But her fear wasn't fake. It was familiar. It was the same fear I had seen in my own face the night Evan told me I didn't remember things. He pressured you, I said. She nodded. He said if I loved him, I'd help him protect you. Protect me. That word again. Always wrapped around the blade. I left before Evan came home. By the time I reached my car, I had my answer. What happened? A forged quitclaim deed. How? My son used his girlfriend's notary stamp to make it look legal. But one question remained, and it was worse than the first. Why would Evan need my house badly enough to risk prison? I found the answer in my mailbox 3 days later. A letter from a bank I didn't use. It was addressed to Evan, but sent to my house. I should have put it back. Instead, I opened it with a kitchen knife and shaking hands. The first line made my knees weak. Final notice regarding home equity line of credit. My house had not just been transferred. It had been borrowed against. Evan had taken out a line of credit using my home as collateral. $180,000. I sat on the floor because the chair suddenly felt too far away. For years, I had been afraid of small numbers. Electric bills. Grocery totals. Prescription costs. Now my son had attached a number to my house, so large it felt unreal. I called the bank. They wouldn't tell me much because I was no longer the owner. That phrase became a locked door I kept slamming into. No longer the owner. No longer authorized. No longer protected. So I hired an attorney with money from the emergency account I had built $5 at a time. Her name was Vivian Hart, and she had the calmest voice I had ever heard. She read the deed. She read the notice. She read the bank letter. Then she looked at me over her glasses. Your son didn't do this casually. I know. No, she said. I mean, this was structured. Transfer first, loan second, eviction third. My mouth went dry. Eviction third. If he wanted money, he could have stopped at the loan. Evicting you means he needs possession. Why? Vivian tapped the bank letter. Either he plans to sell, refinance, or prevent you from discovering something inside the house. Something inside the house. That night, I searched every drawer again. Not for documents this time. For anything missing. The jewelry box was untouched. My cash envelope was still in the freezer behind the peas. The safe in my closet still had my birth certificate, my old marriage license, and Evan's childhood papers. Then I saw the empty space behind the safe. A narrow line in the dust. Something had been there. I knew immediately what it was. A green metal recipe box. My mother's recipe box. I hadn't opened it in years, because it mostly held index cards covered in her handwriting. But after my divorce, I had also put my most important paper in that box. The original letter from Evan's father. The one he sent when Evan was 7. The one saying he was giving up any claim to the house if I promised never to pursue child support again. It was ugly. It was selfish. But it was proof that the house had always been mine. And now it was gone. I called Evan. He didn't answer. So I texted him. Where is Grandma's recipe box? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then his reply came. I don't know what you're talking about. That was when I understood the eviction. He wasn't just removing me from the house. He was removing me from the evidence. The next morning, Vivian filed to challenge the deed. She also requested records from the bank. Evan responded by showing up at my door that evening. He didn't knock like a son. He knocked like a landlord. When I opened the door, he looked tired. For 1 second, I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Then he said, "You hired a lawyer. You stole my house. I was trying to fix things." For who? His mouth tightened. For us. There is no us in an eviction notice. He stepped inside without being invited. I didn't move aside, but he brushed past me anyway. That small act told me more than any confession could have. He already believed the house was his. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, he said. Then explain it. I made some bad investments. How bad? He laughed once bitterly. Bad enough. And instead of telling me, you forged my name. You would have said no. Yes, I said, I would have. He looked at me then with real anger. That house is just sitting here. I stared at him. Just sitting here. You don't need all this space. This is my home. It's an asset. The word was so cold that it cleared my head. Asset. Not home. Not memory. Not sacrifice. Asset. I finally saw what he had trained himself to believe. If the house was only an asset, then taking it wasn't betrayal. It was strategy. You're leaving, I said. He scoffed. You don't get to throw me out. I get to throw you out of the house I still live in. His face changed. You need to stop fighting this. Or what? He lowered his voice. Or I'll file for guardianship. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. There it was. The midpoint truth. The deed was not the whole plan. The loan was not the whole plan. The eviction was not even the whole plan. Evan had been building a case that I was incompetent. The forgotten conversations. The misplaced bills. The comments about my memory. The way he told neighbors he was helping me manage things. He hadn't stolen my house in one day. He had spent a year making me look like someone who could not be trusted with it. I backed away from him. You plan to take control of everything. He didn't deny it. He only said, I plan to keep you safe. I opened the front door. Get out. He left, but not before saying one last thing. You'll thank me when this is over. After he drove away, I locked the door and slid down against it. Then I did something I should have done months earlier. I called my doctor. I asked for a full cognitive evaluation. Not because I believed Evan. Because I knew he would use the question against me. A week later, I sat in a quiet office answering questions, remembering words, drawing clocks, repeating patterns. I passed everything. The doctor wrote a letter stating I showed no signs of cognitive impairment. I cried in the parking lot with the letter pressed to my chest. Not because I was relieved. Because a mother should never have to prove she is sane because her son wants her house. Vivian used the letter immediately. Then the bank records arrived. They showed the home equity loan had been approved 2 weeks after the deed transfer. The money had gone into Evan's business account. I didn't even know he had a business account. What business? I asked. Vivian turned her laptop toward me. A company registration appeared on the screen. Nalan Residential Holdings. Filed 6 months earlier. Business purpose, real estate investment. My house was listed as the company address. I read the screen 3 times. He made my home his business. Vivian's expression was grim. He made your home his starting capital. That answer created the final question. What was he really trying to build? We found it in a contract attached to the loan application. Purchase agreement. A duplex across town. Deposit due in 10 days. Evan had used my house to fund his first investment property. But the closing had fallen through. The seller had kept part of the deposit. The lender still wanted payment. And my house was the collateral. That was why he needed me out. He was going to sell my home to cover the debt before the fraud was exposed. I thought that was the deepest truth. It wasn't. The final reveal came from Tessa. She called me 2 nights before the court hearing. Her voice shook so badly, I could barely understand her. I found the box. I sat up in bed. What box? The green one. My heart pounded. Where? In Evan's storage unit. I met her in a grocery store parking lot because she was afraid he would check her location. She handed me the recipe box through my car window. Her eyes were red. I'm sorry, she whispered. I opened it right there under the parking lot lights. The recipes were still inside. My mother's lemon cake. Her chicken soup. Her handwriting. Underneath them was the letter from Evan's father. But there was something else too. A folded sheet of notebook paper I had never seen. It was in Evan's handwriting. A list. Step 1, get mom to add me to accounts. Step 2, memory concerns documented. Step 3, deed transfer. Step 4, loan. Step 5, vacate. Step 6, sell before challenge. I stared at the list until the words blurred. Tessa was crying. He said writing things down helped him think. I almost laughed. That was my son. Organized even in betrayal. Then I noticed one line at the bottom. Do not let her find Dad letter. And finally, everything made sense. Evan knew the letter proved his father had no claim. Which meant Evan could not pretend the house was part of some family legacy he deserved. It had been mine because I paid for it. Mine because his father abandoned us. Mine because I stayed. The next day in court, Evan wore a suit I had bought him for job interviews. He looked small at the table across from me. Smaller than I expected. Vivian presented the forged deed. The improper notarization. The cognitive evaluation. The bank records. The business filing. The eviction notice. Then she presented the notebook page. Evan's attorney asked for a recess. Evan stared at the paper like it had betrayed him. For the first time, he looked at me fully. Not with anger. Not with strategy. With fear. I waited for satisfaction. It didn't come. Only grief. The judge froze the property transfer, blocked the sale, and referred the forgery and loan documents for investigation. The eviction was dismissed. The deed challenge moved forward, but everyone in that room understood where it was heading. My son had lost control of the story. And I had finally gotten mine back. Weeks later, the deed was reversed. The bank began its own fraud process. Tessa surrendered her notary commission and cooperated. Evan was charged. I did not celebrate. People think justice feels clean. It doesn't. It feels like sweeping glass from a floor you still have to walk across. Evan called me once after everything began. I almost didn't answer. But I did. For years, I had answered every call from my son. That habit did not disappear just because he had hurt me. "Mom," he said. I closed my eyes. "What do you want?" I never meant for it to go this far. That was the closest he came to an apology. I waited. He breathed into the phone. "I thought I could fix it before you found out." And there it was. Not regret for what he did. Regret that I discovered it. "You tried to take my home," I said. I was desperate. "I know. I'm your son." My voice broke, but I kept it steady. "Yes," I said, "and I was your mother when you chose to make me look helpless." He didn't answer. So I said the thing that finally set me free. "I love you, but you are not allowed to destroy me and call it family." Then I hung up. The house is quiet now. The locks have been changed again. This time, I chose the locksmith. The pantry door still has Evan's height marks. I thought about painting over them. I even bought the paint. But I haven't opened the can. Not yet. Those marks belong to the boy I raised. What happened after belongs to the man he chose to become. I keep the green recipe box on the kitchen counter now. Not hidden. Not behind a safe. Right where I can see it. Inside are my mother's recipes, the old letter from Evan's father, the court order restoring my deed, and one blank index card. I put it there for myself. On it, I wrote one sentence. This house was never just an asset. It was the proof that I survived.